I'll tell you why Doug Peterson's return to Philly is business, my brother, never personal. And I'll do it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, good people? This is your man, Tony Wiggins, here with the Locked On Jaguars podcast, your daily Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you that we are free on all platforms, wherever you may get your podcast. And please like and subscribe to the YouTube page, Locked On Jaguars, as well. Today's episode of Locked On Jaguars is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their prize pick projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. I want to tap into my inner Nino Brown today. If you go back to New Jack City, when Ice-T asked him, you did that to that person because it's like it wasn't personal. He said, it's always business, baby, never personal. Now, we'd be naive to think that Doug Pederson doesn't have a little inkling of get back in him, to want to put some act right on Howie Roseman. Just a little backstory. Doug Pederson won a Super Bowl, and within 3 years, he was gone as the Eagles head coach, which is unprecedented. It's unprecedented. And you think that from the outside looking in, and we'll get more into this when we do our crossover later on this week with the boys from Philly. From the outside looking in, that there was a clash of egos. So far, it's a wash because the Eagles replacement with Coach Sirianni, they did go to the playoffs last year. And right now in the power polls, they're the number 1 ranked team in the NFL. And they have one of the best rosters in the league. And Doug Pederson is already being mentioned as coach of the year. So sometimes, you know, when you separate from people, it's not because they're not good at what they do. It's just because it's not a good fit, right? I will tell you this, though. I'm interested to see and hear what the Philadelphia fans do. Of course, I was at the press conference yesterday. I was talking to my buddy Mike DeRocco from ESPN. And he mentioned that they booed Santa Claus. And I told him they also booed Kobe Bryant, who's a Philadelphia native, when he came back for the All-Star game, the late, great Kobe Bryant. They booed Beyonce. If you boo those folks, you boo anybody. You boo your mama. I think Philly fans, the boo birds, I think they will. So I don't think they're going to show Doug Pederson love, but I don't think it's going to be the hatred and vitriol that we might normally get and associate with a coach returning back to his hometown. Because those people remember that Doug Pederson gave them something that no one else was able to give them in their history, and that is a Super Bowl title. He also was a longtime assistant coach there, and it ain't like he quit. It's not like the Bills fans with Doug Marrone where they hate him because he quit. No, he was fired. He didn't want to leave. He was a longtime assistant there. Probably got a, you know, as he said yesterday in the presser, you know, a lot of history, know a lot of great people. And I don't think it's going to be natural for them to really go in on him, but I think they're going to go in on him anyway, just because that's what Philly does, right? It's going to be a good atmosphere. This is one I almost went to. So we're going to talk about Doug Pederson and what his return to Philly means and why I think it's business. I'm going to get back to that in just a second. Why I think it's business and not personal. Talk about the matchups a little bit in segment 2, and then we're going to hit the segment 3. I'm going to break down the rest of the Jaguar schedule, and I'm going to do it in quadrants, kind of. And what I mean by kind of, there used to be 4 sets of 4 when it was a 16-game schedule. Well, you got an extra game now, so I'm going to do 4, 5, 4, and 4, and I'm going to break it down to you about where the Jaguars are right now and why this Sunday's game could mean so much to where they probably end up later on. But back to what we were talking about Doug Pederson making this a business and not personal. To paraphrase him yesterday, basically, he has a lot of memories, but he's here now. He's the opponent now. And his allegiance is to Jacksonville, and his allegiance is to Duval County and the Jacksonville Jaguars and this fan base. And more importantly, his allegiance is to the guys that are in that locker room with him, those players. He owes it to them to put them in a position to be successful and win. That's his job. Now, whether or not they take it upon themselves to have a private discussion and say, you know what, old boy says it's all about business. And true, it is. But we need to go on out here and handle business. And we need to make him let's do this for him. He's done so much for us. Let's do this for him. And because of that, I'm going to have a surprise for y'all later on this week. Oh, hell, I'm going to give it to you now. I think the Jaguars are going to win, and they're going to come home 3-1. And I know that's not me. You guys know me better than that. Folks know me better than that. I'm not going to sit here and be the sunshine and rainbows guy. I just think they're going to beat Philly's ass. That's the way I feel about this team right now. And I just believe that they're going to have a little bit extra incentive to win this game on Sunday. I'm going to discuss the breakdowns and why I think they have a chance to do it, and what extra, besides the fact that it's all about Doug Pederson and it's all about, them arriving. I really think that last week's game in LA, it put a little extra something in there. They got a little bit of extra cachet. It's almost like I watch these cooking shows, right? And the more you advance, you win these competitions. Sometimes you win a competition, you get a secret ingredient that your competitors don't have. And I think when they won that game in LA the other day, somebody, whether it was Guy Fieri or whoever, came and says, you know what, here's some bacon. And y'all know bacon makes just about everything taste better. Here's some bacon. And you know what a good chef can do with some real fat pork? Man, it can make that thing taste so good and tasty. And I think the Jaguars got a secret ingredient. I think they won that game on the road. And now everything they cook, they got bacon in it. Just an ingredient you can't take back, because we know we can go on the road and beat a team that nobody else thinks that we can beat. Not we, them, but I'm acting like I'm one of them, because I ain't hitting nobody. But that's what I think they earned. You remember the Patriots were they were the underdog, and they came out to play the greatest show on turf, and they walked out and they held hands. And I was like, look at them. They look like they're going on a field trip. But they held hands, and they won that close game with the Adam Vinatieri field goal after a late drive by Tom Brady, who wasn't throwing the ball over the field at the time. He was dumping it off to the tight ends and the running backs and just managing the game. Well, that close win for that underdog team was considered an upset until they won 6 more or 5 more, and it became a dynasty. That first win wasn't an upset, was it? That first win was the beginning of something. It was the beginning of a dynasty. So folks in retrospect won't look back at that game as an upset. They look back at that game as the start of something. They just had no idea. It was considered an upset until they won the second one. And then they won the third one. Okay, that game the other day in LA was not an upset. It was just what it is. They're better. It wasn't because anybody was hurt. They're better. And now they know it. They know they're good. And just like last week, Philly puts their pants on just like they do. And I know everybody's going to watch that last game Philadelphia played when they were running all over the field and running all over people. Yeah, they played one in the first week of the season, and they almost lost to Detroit. So don't think that I'm just coming out here just throwing something on the wall to see what sticks. I'm telling you, the Jaguars are going to win this game. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to get outright specific with you about some of these matchups, and I'll do it here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. I got to tell you about PrizePicks, who's our sponsor today, PrizePicks.com. You can get the app or just go to PrizePicks.com. I got them both. Sometimes it depends where I'm at. What device I have determines what I use. But I make sure I go on there every single day and I look at my daily fantasy entries. And I look at the player projections that are attached to those entries. For instance, Trevor Lawrence is going to throw for this amount of yards. This is the number that PrizePicks put on it, and you got to determine whether it's more or less. Now, if you do that with between 2 and 5 different players, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You can play the flex option where you don't even have to get them all right to win something. You need to go to prizepicks.com. You can do it for football, college basketball, women and men, soccer, WNBA, NBA, Major League Baseball, PGA, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing. All of this stuff is on prizepicks.com. And all you got to do is look at the entries, look at the projections, and say whether it's more or less and lay your money down. Look, if you deposit $100, they're going to match you with a $100 instant deposit on your first deposit. If you put in 50, they'll give you $50 on your instant deposit, an instant match to your first deposit. But you have to use the promo code Locked On at sign up for that instant deposit match. It's prizepicks.com or PrizePicks app. Locked On is the promo code to get an instant deposit match of up to $100 on your first deposit. We thank you for joining us here again on Locked On Jaguars, making us your first listen. It's your team every day. Of course, you know that. And it's all about the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, sitting at 2-1 atop of the AFC South. I got to get this off my chest. When you ever see my finger come up like this, if you're watching on YouTube, you know I'm going to say something. Isn't it funny how when the Jaguars all of a sudden win in the division, now everybody wants to say how bad the division is? Isn't it funny how the Jaguars win the division and they still have people, well, they win games, and then they still have people that the Jaguars dominated in front of them on the power poll and the power rankings? Stop worrying about people respecting you, because they ain't going to do it. Some people ain't going to respect you until they wake up the next day and that eye swole up, and then they wonder why they got rocked. And it's because the disrespect kept coming. Let the Jaguars, I ain't telling you go out there and punch nobody in the face. What I'm telling you is let the Jaguars and their physical style of play do the talking for you. See, this is why I think this is real. Because the things that you don't fake in the National Football League are the things that the Jaguars are actually doing well. They corrected it from week one. Some of the things they did well in week one. I'm going to give Washington credit for winning that game. I'm not going to say the Jaguars lost it, but the Jaguars did some soul-searching and self-correction and now appear to be more like the team that rallied from the early deficit they were in with Washington than the team that created that deficit in the first place. You don't fake physical. You can't, not in the NFL. You don't fake big, strong, powerful. You don't fake going for it on 4th and 1 and your running back going for 50 yards. You don't fake punching people in the face. You don't fake not allowing your quarterback to get sacked. You don't fake creating turnovers because of said physicality. You just don't do it. Those things are tangible and they are real. And any football coach will tell you that it comes down to blocking and tackling. Now, of course, you need a great quarterback or a very good quarterback and a coach and a scheme and guys who buy in and all of that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, at the end of the day, if you have all of those things and both teams have all of those things, 9 times out of 10, the team with the best quarterback usually comes out on top. But there's something else. The team that blocks and tackles the best usually wins. Trenches. Jawan Taylor and Cam Robinson and Brandon Scherf in particular are playing super well. Luke Fortner is improving at center. Philly does have a very good defense. But Fletcher Cox is their best player, and he's older now. So they kind of come at you with their scheme and come at you in waves. I would rather have the Jaguars front seven than Philly's front seven. Philly has a very good offensive line. But I would rather have the Jaguars defensive line going against their offensive line than vice versa, than to have Philly's defensive line going against the Jaguars offensive line. They got some very good receivers now. This is a clear advantage where they have an advantage over Jacksonville. But Christian Kirk and Zay Jones don't have to guard their receivers. That's up to Tyson Campbell and the rest of the crew to guard their receivers, and up to the scheme to make sure Jalen Hurts does not get off early. Now, Jalen Hurts is a problem. He is a problem. He has improved his accuracy, and he can run. The Jags are going to have to play some gap and hold and not let him get away the way they let Carson Wentz get away a couple of times. They're going to have to make sure that they tackle and they stay in discipline in their gaps and where they're supposed to be. It's going to be on the linebackers too, because they also challenge you with their running backs catching the ball out of the backfield. Dallas Goedert is a problem at tight end. Okay, so I do believe that healthy, this is the best offense the Jaguars will play, even though the one they played last week had a lot of talented players. One guy was missing and the quarterback was a little bit banged up, but we're still not making excuses for him. The thing is this is why I think Jacksonville, I don't think they're out physical and outmanned once again, not like they were last week. And they handled that fine. So the physical part of the game is not going to be a problem. Situational football will be the thing to me that matters. And as long as Trevor Lawrence doesn't get too loose with the ball, and as long as someone doesn't let Chauncey Gardner-Johnson talk him into getting a personal foul, I think the Jaguars offense is going to be able to dial up some things too. I think the Jaguars offense is going to be able to generate points. And I think if this game is close, they're going to start feeling like they can win it. And Philly might start looking around a little bit. Just a caveat to the assistant GM or the special assistant to the GM, Dave Caldwell, my friend, he works in Philly. It's going to be another thing to watch this team with a lot of the guys on this team, and of course Trent playing in Philly right in front of Dave to see, hey, look, this is what we got now. This is who we are. It's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a real good game. Here's the importance of it. If they win it, they go 3-1. And in this quadrant, this first 4 games, if you'd have gone up to anybody and said the Jags will play Indy, Washington, the Chargers, and Philly, and they're going to go 3-1. Somebody would have taken you to Vegas and said, put everything you got on that, and I'll take it, because you would have won a lot of money. Hell, if you said the Jaguars are going to be 2-2 after the first 4 games, most people would have bid into it. I want to look at the other 3 quote-unquote quadrants, even though one game has 5 games in it. And I'm going to tell you why this week could be magical for Jacksonville if they go 3-1. And I'll do it in just a second here on. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. Make sure you check out our daily sponsor, PrizePicks, and go get those entries in so you can win you some Skrilla at PrizePicks.com or the PrizePicks app. I want to discuss the rest of this schedule. So after this week, we're going to look ahead a little bit, because at the end of the day, as long as the Jaguars play well, whether they're 2-2 or 3-1, they're going to be sitting in a good place, right? So the next 4 games after that are at home against Houston, on the road against Indy, at home against the Giants, and at home again against Denver. They can win all 4 of those games. You heard me. Because I'm looking at the quarterback play, and that includes Russell Wilson, Mr. Go Broncos, let's roll, or whatever the hell he said. They ain't playing well, and they haven't scored more than 16 points all year. And Doug Pederson's going to outcoach everybody on that list, although I got a lot of respect for Brian Daboll. Still, he's going to outcoach everybody on that list. The Jaguars could very well be 7-1, at worst 6-2 after those next 4 games. Now, the 5 games after that, there's a 5-game stretch that's going to be critical to this season. So what I'm going to do is skip that and go to the last 4 and then come back. They play Dallas, who has a very good defense, although Dak will be back by the end, so that might be a plus for Jacksonville. Then they play at the Jets, at Houston, and then they're home against Tennessee. They could win. They should easily win 3 of those games. So now let's just say, for the sake of this, I give you 6-2 after the first 8. And now I give you 3-1 for those last 4. So that's 9-3. Now let's get to the meat of the schedule. These 5 games right now, in my opinion, are tough. And really, if you want to include the Dallas game as the 6th game, or knock the Raiders off, who their opponent in game number 9, I think the toughest 5-game stretch they have is at KC, Baltimore at home, at Detroit, at Tennessee, and then Dallas at home. To me, that's the toughest schedule they have, just from a talent and physical standpoint. You got to deal with Mahomes and Lamar in consecutive weeks, and then Detroit plays really, really hard. You got the rivalry against Tennessee on the road, and then you got to deal with Dallas's defense and Michael Parsons and all that business. So technically, the toughest 5-game stretch is that stretch, but we ain't gonna do it that way. We're gonna say they're 9-3 over 1-2, quadrant 1, 2, and those blocks, and the 4th one. These 5 games in the middle. The Raiders at home, they should beat them because the Raiders have been wildly inconsistent, and they haven't won a game yet. They're 0-3. At Kansas City is going to be tough always. I don't care if the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes or if they have Elvis Gerbach. That's a tough place to win, right? But you can get it done. I mean, you just got to go out and play physical. They lost this week to the Colts. Baltimore at home. Baltimore might be the best team in the league. Maybe. I don't know, but that's tough because you got Lamar, and Lamar's Lamar, right? But still, we saw them give up 28 points in the 4th quarter of a game too. At Detroit. See, these are the games that you got to win. You got to beat the Raiders. You got to go to Detroit and win, and you got to go to Tennessee and win. You win those 3. And let's just say, for the sake of this now, I say Kansas City and Baltimore are close games, and they don't win them. So in those 5 games, that makes them 5-2. Now that 9-3, not 5-2, 3-2. I did go to Westside High School back in the day. 3-2. So now you're looking at a 12-5 record. So go back and take a game away. Who do you take? The Giants? I doubt it. Daniel Jones ain't beating this team. Denver? I don't know. Take a game away and you're 11-6. This is why I keep telling people, I think the Jaguars are going to make the playoffs. They're going to win the division to make the playoffs. They could very well sweep that division and not lose one game. And I know the Titans people will be, it's a rivalry and whatever, man. Whatever. That stuff doesn't mean a hill of beans right now because of Trevor Lawrence and Doug Pederson. So that's why this game is so critical this week. It's more like how they play. I was in physical therapy, and Caitlin today she said this. She ain't even listened to my podcast. She said it's not that they won. It's the manner in which they did it, and it just looks real. It doesn't look like they went out and got lucky. It looks like they actually are really, really good. And that was one of the smartest opinions that I've heard, one, because it sounded just like something I said, so shout out to my physical therapist sounding like me. But the other thing is, it's true. There are people that have these predictions about Jacksonville that are still thinking about last year and the year before, This ain't that, brother. That's over. This is something new and something fresh. We're going to find out just how new and fresh it is in Philly. You go up there, you're going to have a blast, though, man, because they got a nice little setup outside in Xfinity Live. It's something else. I ain't going to have this little endless cheesesteak debate about where the best cheesesteaks are, whoever goes. I heard it's this place and that, but I don't know. I know a dude that works at Reading Market that told me the best cheesesteak is probably what I made at my house someday. He says that stuff is overblown. And I think the best steak I ever eaten has been one I cooked, not at a restaurant. So he could possibly be right. You want some meat and potatoes, man? You need to check out the Peacock and Williamson podcast, the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You don't get it any better than that. Brian Peacock is the ultimate professional, and he really, really knows what he's talking about. You can hear him on Locked On 49ers with my man Eric Crocker. But he's also with Matt Williamson on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, and Matt's a former NFL scout, so they give you a yin and a yang that you don't get everywhere else, man. It's a very unique thing to experience. So make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Like and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. It's free on all platforms. Make that your second listen, because you make me your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars, and we're eternally grateful that you join us here it feels good to be talking to an audience of a really good football team for a change and not being a grief counselor. Let's just keep it up and hope that they keep going as we continue our regular programming throughout the week. We have a crossover coming up on Thursday. And of course, I'd be remiss if I told you that, we do have this storm coming in, and I don't know what the power situation is going to be. One, I hope everyone stays safe. I'm praying for everyone to be safe. Make sure you have all of the things in terms of disaster preparedness you need. And hopefully we'll all get back together after this is over with, and everyone's life will still be the same. But until then, you guys take care of each other, and let's make sure we make it through the storm together and get ready for this game this weekend. Thanks for joining me here on the Locked On Podcast Network and Locked On Jaguars. See you next time.